Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome back to your calendar's franchise mode here in NHL 25. So in last episode, if you did not catch up, we started up the season simulation. We actually simulated already halfway point to the season, and so far it's been a pretty decent season, 23-16-2, not necessarily lighting the world on fire, but doing good enough that I think this team is going to have a strong run the rest of the season and potentially this postseason. As you can see, if I remove my face, we are 6th in goals for, 10th in goals against, 4th on the power play, and 6th on the penalty kills. So our special teams have been good. 5-on-5 play has been pretty good. Our goals against is a little bit high, but honestly, it's not that bad to be top 10. Obviously, I hope that improves as the season goes on, but it's been a good season for the most part. There has been some issues that have been kind of a bit strange. As we go look at our roster here, you can see we have pretty good depth scoring, I would say, for the most part. Like if we look at our forwards, we have like a good stuff from our first lines and our second lines. A little bit maybe of a drop off down in this area, like in Fido and Eriksson and such like that. But in general, I've been pretty happy with the offensive output. But the one thing that's been a little bit strange here this season so far, again, is Solovyov has dropped to an .896 save percentage with a 2.9 goals against average. So when Solovyov has bad regular seasons, usually his playoffs are really good, at least in the past. So I'm not too sure if this is a good thing to see or not, but like his last 4 years have been some of the most inconsistent hockey I've ever seen, going from a .913 to an .899, then from a .914 to an .896. Like, I don't even really know what to expect this postseason, because we could either get this version of Solovyov where he posted an .812, or we could get this version of Solovyov where he posted a .922. So kind of crazy how he's been simulating over the last few seasons, but I still think we're good enough that I think he's going to have a better run when he gets to the postseason. But there could be obviously the issue that maybe he doesn't play that good in the playoffs as well. But from an offensive output, like we've been scoring enough goals that maybe we'll be able to offset any goals that we allow. But at the same time, we might look into making some sort of adjustments. Because, for instance, the young top six pairing of Albert and Cassivi, right now it's not been simulating too good. It's got some bad plus-minus issues. So likely what we're going to be doing in this episode is scheme fitting it, so that way we could hopefully get it to simulate a little bit better. If it doesn't simulate better, maybe we have to look into making some adjustments to it via trade or something like that. Aside from that, there has been a little bit of players that have been underperforming, like I said, on the offensive side of things. Like maybe I would prefer a little bit more points out of somebody like Ronnie Leahy. He's only got 19 points at the moment. Maybe more out of Eriksson, 25 and 37. How he has played only 37 games because he did miss some time due to injury. So maybe he's not that bad. He's just one of those guys that is really tough to get a lot of ice time for. So I'm not too sure exactly what we're going to do with that. Leeson's on 16 points. Like, we're not necessarily getting the most offense from our like third and fourth lines. You can see youngster Korliuk only has 1 goal and 3 points in his first 41 career games. So he isn't really doing too much. He isn't taking a lot of penalties at least. But yeah, this guy hasn't been that great for that fourth line. So in general, just maybe we need to improve the depth scoring a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe we don't want to overthink it because maybe it'll find itself in the postseason. But at least we have a winning record so far, so I feel a little bit safer. Maybe simulate more of the season without making adjustments. But obviously, we might have to look at some adjustments if there is still some sort of underlying issues. Like I said, the goals against is a little bit high. It could get way worse. It could get even better as the season goes on. So I guess we'll probably end up, like, before actually getting to the trade deadline, which is not too far now, we'll probably end up just simulating more and seeing if this team could actually kind of improve in those type of areas first. But anyways, before we get into all that type of thing, let's get in your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say about last episode, and then we will see what this team is able to do for more of the season. We'll probably get the rest of this regular season done, to be honest, but we'll see what ends up happening. We should be a playoff team, I think, easily, but the question is for how long. So the first comment is from Garage TV, who says, hope the rest of the season goes well, and I hope so too. I think this year, like, considering we have good special teams and we have good goals for per game, and then, like, say the goals against is kind of a bit more average, I think we're going to be good enough to make it to the postseason easily. Obviously, like I just was saying, I don't know how long of this playoff run we're going to have. Last year was a little bit of lackluster. Year before, we went to the finals. So anything in between would probably happen. But I think this team is still built up enough that they could actually go for a good run. but obviously it just depends on the sim engine and what it wants for us. Next comment is from Michael Dose, who says, Houghton doing what he's doing as an exact top 4 versus a low or medium elite is really amazing to me. I totally agree he needs to be locked up, as you are getting him maybe $4 to $5 million cheaper. And yeah, that was a big contract that we did in last episode. So Houghton, the reason why he's listed as an exact top 4, I actually know he just jumped up, I guess, back to an exact elite. So that's kind of weird. So I don't really know what to make of that, because I think he started off as a low elite when we traded for him with the Chicago Blackhawks. Then he became more of like an exact top 4 kind of, because he wasn't super high, but maybe with the statistical growth, it pushed him into that exact elite status or something like that. But yeah, we locked him up anyways on a nice little deal. $13.65 million might seem like a lot right now, but for the elite offensive defenseman down the road, they're going to be getting paid a ton of money. Obviously, just recently I looked in my Aliens episode, and those guys were getting paid a lot of money. The top elite offensive defenders, like, I think they're getting paid more than this, so I'm okay with giving somebody like Houghton that much money, when Houghton literally is usually a point per game kind of defenseman for the most part. Last year he had 90 points. The year before he had 61 and 64, and obviously the years before that he was still picking up like 50 points as a guy that is just still trying to find himself at that point in time. So been very impressed with this guy, and he might end up being one of those guys that end up making the Channel Hall of Fame. Like 9 points last year in the 6 playoff games we played. The year we went to the finals, 15 points. So he definitely has shown to me that he wants to be here for the long haul, and that he's one of the best offensive defensemen, if not the best, in the entire league. So to lock him up is definitely very nice. Even if it does have a clause on it, I don't care, because he's probably not going to get dealt during that span. And the last and final comment is from Saturn Taco, says, you might want to consider trading Eriksson right now, since he seems to be the hardest one to find ice time for. Don't forget to scheme fit your third pairing defenseman. So yeah, Eriksson maybe could get dealt for a guy that's more listed as a third line center, because right now getting Eriksson ice time, and the fact that he's a pending UFA might be hard. Actually, I just realized he has a no movement clause. I didn't even remember that I gave him a no movement clause, so I guess that throws that out the window. I completely forgot about that. We could get him to waive it, but for a 1 year left, I don't think it's worth it. So by that standard, we're probably just going to end up losing him maybe this offseason to free agency, which is probably okay, because I feel like we don't really necessarily need him that much. Like, he's been a good defensive forward. He has 5 shorthanded goals and 11 shorthanded points. But if we can't afford to bring him back, then that's not the end of the world. But yeah, it is tough to get him ice time. But with him having a no movement clause, which I honestly completely forgot I gave him to, we can probably not deal him. I was thinking of probably moving him for like a third line center. But if I have to try and get him to waive the clause and all that stuff, I just don't want to cause any issues with the morale on his team. So likely he doesn't get dealt. Now, we are going to stop the scheme fit that top 6 pairing. Aside from that, I don't think there's really much else I can do to fully upgrade this team. We are going to still look at the trade deadline probably and just see if there's any options to maybe upgrade our team. But I don't think there's really much this team needs in terms of upgrades. Like, I know we're technically the exact same team almost as last year, but maybe if we run it twice, it'll help out things. So yeah, definitely just got to scheme fit this top 6 pairing, because it hasn't been good, and the chemistry on it is also not that great, so that's maybe why it's not simulating that good. Alright, so with that said, I think we're going to keep on simulating, and we're going to obviously go to the 1st of February, because that's when we could actually do our scheme fitting stuff for that top 6 pairing. Aside from that, let's hope that the team continues to simulate well, and hopefully that goals against number starts to go down maybe a little bit more. Obviously, it doesn't necessarily be the most insane thing in the world, but as long as it's like good enough, I will take it. Also, actually, one thing I just wanted to mention, which is kind of hilarious, is the day before I'm recording this, so I'm recording this literally on the actual NHL trade deadline. Obviously, Brock Nelson got dealt to the Colorado Avalanche, and do you know who did that first? This guy right here. We traded Brock Nelson to Colorado. Remember, he went on to win the Stanley Cup, so maybe Lou Lamoriello watches these videos. I honestly have no idea, but it's kind of insane that actually happened. I think I had that happen one other time. Like, I think in my Detroit series way back in like NHL 20 or 21, whenever that was, I think if I remember right, I had Patrick Kane in Detroit. So that is kind of interesting that sometimes like those type of things happen when you play franchise mode, and then obviously in real life they happen too. So kind of funny on that sense. But with that said, I think we'll go right to the 1st, just so we could actually just get right to use scheme fitting this stuff, just because or else I might end up forgetting, to be honest. So let's take it a little bit slow still anyways. I do want to kind of go for this episode a little bit quick because as I'm recording this, it's currently 10:41, and obviously the trade deadline, I think officially a lot of those trades start coming in at like 11 a.m. or something like that. So I'm probably already going to miss like probably a few trades, and I'm going to have to catch up, but I kind of want to see those as they happen, considering it's probably a pretty big trade deadline, hopefully for my Ottawa Senators, because that would be nice to see if there's any interesting trades with that. But anyways, first game of this episode, we lose in a shootout to Anaheim. We do beat Detroit nicely and defensively. We do beat Pittsburgh 4-3. We beat Nashville 5-2. Minnesota, we win in overtime. Yeah, the team is still doing really good. Obviously, we've had some rough games before, though. Like, I think it was... Where was it? I remember there was a really bad loss that we had, but we still end up winning a good chunk of games. I can't even remember when it was, but yeah, this team does have some rough games, but we still have a very, very good record for this point of the season. We got Vegas and Toronto. Let's see what we do against them. Win, and a 10-1 win over Toronto. Well, that's a fantastic win to see. We just completely blew them up. I wonder who had points in that game, as our captain has gone down with back spasms. That's not ideal. It's still February the 7th. It's not long term. I'm just going to go replace player on it. And we get back-to-back shutouts after that 10-1 win as well. So in our last 3 games going into February 1st, we've only allowed 1 goal. So our goals against is probably better than 10th now, my guess. But we are 31-16-3. We're currently on a, 8-game winning streak since that shootout loss. And we've won 9 of our last 10 games. So this team is still trending in the right direction. I honestly don't even think I want to make adjustments this year, but we might have to. But we'll take a look at the deadline anyways when we get to that point. But let's go into the scheme fit stuff. So we got to talk over to, who was it, Cassivi, and to the young defenseman Albrecht, and try and get them to fit our system a little bit better. So Cassivi, let's talk on to you. On ice play, and let's go scheme fit, convincing. Boom. And we want you to fit, I guess it's line 3, because that's the top 6 defensive pairing. It's kind of weird for a defenseman saying line 3, but let's go with that. And then we will do the same thing with Albrecht, the youngster. Hopefully that helps their plus minus out. Now it might be improved now because apparently we're the 3rd best defensive team in the league. Just like that within a month of simulating. So maybe that defensive pairing is getting better as the season goes on. It doesn't need to be scheme fitted, but I might as well scheme fit anyways. And that way we could get rid of that minus on that unit. So let's do that for the 3rd line. Perfect. And yeah, hopefully that works out well. Let's take a look and see what the chemistry looks like now, considering they both agreed to it. If we go to edit lines here, let's see what it is looking like. Chemistry on offense obviously looks fantastic. Chemistry on defense is muchly improved, and it's a +4. Wow. So when you scheme fit players, it literally jumps up that much. That's actually kind of insane. We could literally scheme fit the 2nd pairing if we really want to, too. But it's not necessarily a bad pairing. I don't really want to have chemistry throughout every single line just because I feel like it's kind of cheating a bit, but we have really good chemistry. This team should be very good the rest of this way. And the fact that we fit the coach this well is fantastic. Like, now that we fit the coach well, because we have scheme fitted a lot of players over the last few years, we should probably have over like a 75% team fit, right? Let's see this. Yeah, we're up to a 78% team fit with this current coach. So this current head coach has to be our coach for quite a while. Obviously with this roster, because a lot of these guys on this team should be here for the long haul. But yeah, that was a much better month. And Solovyov's save percentage is going up to a 905 now, so he was at an 896, but that month definitely helped him out a lot. So let's keep on simulating. And we, like I said, we'll probably jump right into the trade deadline when we get to that point, but we still have a lot of simulation to go, and I do want to get through the rest of the season, I think, at this point. All right, month of February. Can it be just as good as last month, as Frondell has returned before our next game, which is nice that we had a week off, so that way he didn't really miss anything. So Kaminsky will come back out. The one thing about our ice time, though, still is getting guys like Kaminsky and Pratt more ice time. That's the one thing I could look to potentially do in terms of trades, because both those guys are listed as actual players for our roster. If we go to the AHL, there's not really anybody I would call up right now. I mean, Osgood, but he's a top 6 defenseman. Novoseltsev's a depth defenseman, but I'm not scratching him. So by that standard, maybe I trade Kaminsky and Pratt and find a new depth defenseman and a new depth forward. I'm not too sure. Not too sure because there's got to be a way to get them ice time somewhere else. So yeah, it could be still something we look into doing, or we just keep them and hope that they get a chance to play in the lineup if there's any injuries. Anyways, next month, let's see what we got here. Can we continue the winning streak? Yes, we can, and it's another shutout. That's 3 straight shutouts from Solovyov, or maybe Hainsey has some too, but our team's definitely playing a lot better, and we got a trade offer, which is interesting because these guys might be depth options that they're offering me. The Boston Bruins are willing to send us Beagle and Fisher for a 3rd-round pick and a prospect. I know that these guys are actually listed as depth forwards and stuff, I think. Beagle, I think, is definitely a depth forward. Yeah, Beagle's a depth forward, so he would be the replacement for basically Kaminsky. And then Fisher is a depth defenseman, but I don't really know if I'd want a real player on this team, to be honest. But those are actual depth options. I don't know about giving up a 3rd-round pick, to be honest, though, for that. So I'm not going to accept that, but that's the type of depth players I would prefer in case, for morale purposes at least. So our winning streak's ended by Columbus, but then we get right back onto it with a win over Pittsburgh. Nice. All right. 2nd-round pick for Hendricks Lapierre and a 6th. No, thank you, New York. No, thank you. Don't really want to make trades with the Rangers, as Zane Giordano's been injured. It's only for like a week or so, but that's kind of a substantial injury. We're just going to go replace players, so that way we could get Kaminsky into that spot potentially, and that way he doesn't complain for a part of the season. David Spacek, no, I don't need to claim you on waivers. Game against Boston is another win. Damn, we've won like mostly every game this episode, which is pretty insane. All right, so let's see. Kaminsky could come back out here. And who was it that was here again? Oh, yeah, Giordano. Hopefully Giordano's still simulating well because he was off to a really good start this season. So, and there's 2 more wins. Jesus. This team is absolutely cruising right now in this episode. There's another loss, but we've literally only had like 3 losses since this game against the Ducks. Like, we went on an 8-9 game win streak, a 9-game winning streak, basically, lost a game, then went on another 7-game winning streak, then had it ended by Colorado. Absolutely insane. Yeah, this team is probably going to end up simulating too good and then end up being a 1st-round exit again, but right now I don't think there's any changes I need to make potentially as the rest of the season goes on. We're literally in 1st place in the entire NHL. Like, I know some of you guys are probably going to want me to make deadline deals, but what am I supposed to address? Like, I'm going to have to look at some of our player stats probably a little bit earlier than I'd like to. There's another 10-3 win. God damn, man. Yeah, damn, man. When we lose to Minnesota. All right. So, 40-19-3 a day before the deadline. Is there any underlying issues that need to be resolved? Let's see. In terms of our team stats right now, we are 1st in goals for, so we're the best offensive team in the NHL. We are 3rd in goals against, 1st on the power play, and 7th on the penalty kill. So our goals against and defensive play has drastically improved. We're very good offensively. I honestly don't know if there's anything I want to address based on that. If I look at our lines here, at the things that were a little bit issues before, has Koryliuk started to find his offense a little bit? As you 7 points still in 62 games is pretty low. He is listed as depth forward. We could maybe look for a 4th-line center, and then Koryliuk could end up getting scratched, and then maybe I send Kaminsky down just because he's gonna complain about ice time. I don't know about using Koryliuk as a scratch though, because he's a young option. Do I really need to do that? Oh, Pratt's losing morale because of ice time. So that's definitely something I should probably look towards doing. I maybe should send Pratt down and get ourselves an actual depth defenseman, because or else morale might be an issue there. Wilkinson, are you still a depth defenseman? You are not. If you are a depth defenseman, that would be nice. Aside from that, there's not really any other guys I'd use as depth. Maybe Rawlings, because he's 25, but he's a minor top 4. Let me see. Yeah, I think we might have to trade Pratt for a depth defenseman. Or send Pratt down and basically find a depth defenseman. But that would also mean probably trading Kaminsky might not be a bad idea either just because of his ice time. But he also could be a guy that gets in if there's any injuries down the stretch, which I think is pretty important. Leeson's losing morale still because of ice time too, which is not ideal. I don't have any way of getting him into the top 6. I might have to pull out a random trade completely. Like, everybody on this team's getting good ice time except for guys like Leeson. Like, if I moved a leg up and I traded Leeson away when we're doing this well, I know it's kind of a bad idea, but how are we going to get this guy more ice time? We could always trade him in the off season, but I think he's just going to continuously complain. Trying to think of what's a good idea. Korolyuk is probably better as a winger, but he's okay as a center mid. Is Leg going to be a good fit for that line? Yeah, Leg is a good fit for that third line eventually too, and he actually is a third line scoring forward. He has 17 goals this season compared to the 13 goals and 25 points from Leeson. 25, and that would be 25 as well. They're literally doing the exact same amount of offensive scoring right now. I think I might actually think about trading Leeson already. And then basically I could run Kaminsky on that fourth line spot instead. I know it's kind of weird to do that. But that way Kaminsky just actually gets his playing time he deserves maybe by playing in the lineup. Yeah, I think Leeson and Pratt both have to go. So I need a depth defenseman and a depth forward. And then we may be able to get some good stuff back in terms of Leeson as well. I'm not sure on his trade value, but I think this might be the time to cash out on him. So let's go and actually look for some trades before the actual deadline itself and see if we could figure anything out. So is there any team that are interested in both those guys? Just because I can't find a way to get them ice time. I don't want people to complain on this team and just drop off and all that type of thing. This will also free up us cap in the future. But Leeson's got a good chunk of value. He is better than an 80 for sure. It's just obviously his morale is not that great. So Leeson, and then we look to trade away Pratt as well. Just because Pratt, I could send him to the AHL, but at the same time, I think maybe just adding him to a deal would be okay. And we just need, like I said, a depth forward and a depth defenseman and maybe a pick back from any of these teams. Is there a team that I could realistically trade him to? The Jets are doing good right now. I don't want to trade him to anybody too good, but I don't want to trade him to anybody too bad either. It was just kind of like a tweener team that wants both of them. Let's see. Wow, the Pittsburgh Penguins only have 19 wins at this stage. It's pretty bad. The New York Jersey Devils. Don't really want to trade to the Eastern Conference, to be honest. Florida. Okay, Florida's 24, 28, and 8. So they aren't doing the best in the world. But if I traded both them away to the Florida Panthers, and actually that's in our conference still. I would prefer maybe to trade to the West. And maybe we can find a way to trade him to Dallas, even though Dallas doesn't want Pratt. If we take back, let's just say, who do they have as depth defenders that we could bring in? They actually have to be listed as a depth defenseman. Wow, they have some injury trouble right now, too. Bannister in the AHL is too low. Marco, who's injured at the moment, is a top 6 defenseman. Bannister is listed as a minor top 2. They don't really have a depth defender. I mean, there is Ronan Seeley, but he is a minor top 2. Not really what I'm looking for then. Columbus is in our division. Colorado's in the West. That's not a bad option. I guess I could just trade him to any Western Conference team. Colorado, which is where Salmelainen is. We could trade him there, but I feel like I should trade him to somewhere else other than Colorado. Let's see. Anaheim does want both of them, so maybe we could deal a deal with Anaheim. Do they have any depth defenders? Damn, their defensive core is pretty trash right now. I don't know if there's players losing morale, but it's a really weak defensive core. Coughlin, is he a depth defenseman? He is, but he's a real guy. I don't know if I really want any real players. Maybe we'll look at some other teams. What about the Jets? Morrison, 77, medium 4. 1 year left, and he's an RFA. Let's see, you're looking like Salvador Morrison. 9 goals this season. But he's actually listed as a depth defenseman. He's been actually really good with the Jets in the lineup. Using him as a depth defenseman seems like a little bit of a disservice, but he's kind of what I'm looking to get. There is also a 77 overall low lead at 22. And there's also Newman who's 29. Maybe Newman would make more sense just because he's an actual older guy at this stage. Yeah, let's get Newman into this deal. And we also need to take back a depth forward, which right now we have a depth center, so we need a depth winger. Let's see, depth winger. Maybe somebody like Cornette. Yeah, and Cornette's listed as a fourth liner. I don't want somebody listed as a fourth liner. Little's got too much value. He is a depth forward, but still, I don't want to scratch a young kid like that. Malmavar's way too good. Wennerberg's a 75. Damn, they don't really have a lot of depth options. Hobbs has a 78, fourth liner. Tulipov is a 77 depth forward. That's more what I'm talking about at 28. Just because I want the bare minimum value coming back, and then I could easily steal in a first round pick into the steal, I think. Yeah, this might be able to work as is. Maybe I'd have to add a pick into this trade to move up a little bit, but I think this could work out. So we get rid of two guys that are not going to be happy with their ice time anyway, so Leeson and Pratt. We bring in two guys that will be more happy with the ice time in the NHL, and we get in our first round pick potentially in a year that we could win the Stanley Cup. So that first round pick could end up getting dealt again, but this is, I think, a pretty good deal. So would it work? That's rejected. The value is insufficient. I said I could be willing to throw in a pick, so maybe I throw in my second from Utah basically to move into the first round. But I also do have multiple thirds, so maybe I'll throw in the Colorado Avalanche third round pick, and that maybe should get it done. So basically we move up two rounds to the first round, and they basically get a good player in Leeson that's going to compensate for everything else pretty much in terms of value. Pratt has no value whatsoever, so this is mostly a nothing trade except for Leeson for a first rounder when you think about it on paper. So would this work? Leeson with Pratt in a third for Newman, Tulipov, and a first round pick. And that's accepted. So there we go. We do get the chance to move up to a first round selection with that. We do get rid of Leeson, but I think it was something that had to be done. He was complaining about his ice time. A lot of people aren't very happy about that trade, but he was complaining about his ice time, and that's the main thing to me that made him get dealt. Obviously, if he wasn't complaining about his ice time, maybe I'd think about it differently, but Leg was literally scoring the same amount of points as him on a fourth line role, so I think that's a good little lateral move. Was it smart for the future? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, Leeson signed for 3 years at $3 million, so he could be a good top six forward somewhere else, but I think it's an okay move to make, especially when we don't know still when we're going to be moving on from Frindell, so I think that's an okay deal. And I don't think it's going to hurt us that much. Kaminsky getting some playing time is nice. And then now we have some actual guys listed as depth options instead. So nobody on this team should be complaining about their ice time, I would assume. So let me go to the power play here for a second, though. Now that we made that trade, Eriksson is still not on the power play. It would be nice to get Eriksson power play time, but I don't know how I can logistically do that still. So we'll keep it like this, but I think that's the only move we're going to be making in this episode. All right, so also speaking of trades, as I'm literally recording this, since I said this is the actual trade deadline, it seems like apparently the Sens might be making a trade with the Sabres, which is kind of interesting. So I guess I'll have to see what ends up happening once I'm done recording this episode, but with that said, I think since we've made our blockbuster trade ourselves, I think we're ready to advance just maybe even a day past the trade deadline. I don't think there's really much I could do in terms of upgrades without making players out of their positions and losing morale. So I was going to hop into the deadline, but I don't think it's needed at this stage. So let's go to a day after the deadline and see if there was any former players getting dealt. And then we will obviously continue to simulate the rest of the season. But I think that deal that we made is a smart one. I know it offloads a little bit of cap as well for our future, so that's also good. But I think obviously getting Leg more ice time on that third line since he was doing just as good as Leeson is good. And apparently we have invalid lines and or rosters. I don't know what that means. Oh, Houghton got injured? Why didn't it just mention that Houghton got injured? What the hell, man? Let me go to edit lines here. I don't know why it didn't tell me that Houghton just got injured. I don't even know how long term he's out for. That's actually a pretty substantial blow. Of course, that happens at the deadline now. Because if this doesn't happen at the deadline, it wouldn't be as bad. But we'll get Schaefer onto that top pairing, and Albrecht, I guess, could go up too. For the defensive core, Newman will jump in. Looks like he's a -1 on our defense right now. Oh my goodness, why is this game being a douche right now? Let's go to the second power play. There's no adjustments to make even, but it's showing that there's adjustments. We'll just throw in... I'll just throw Newman into both these spots. I don't really give a shit, to be honest. But in terms of the defensive core, let me take a look at this again. -1. Newman's not really the best depth defenseman. Maybe I should have looked at somebody else. Okay, if I go with that, at least it's no minus. So we'll go with that. Newman could play right on the top pairing, even though he's a 77. It's not for probably too long term, I guess. Oh, there's the notification about it now. So Olli Howden's been injured with injured ribs, and he's out till March the 13th. So yeah, it's not long term. I need to go edit lines manually again, even though I just literally adjusted the lines after that injury. I didn't want to go best lines by mistake, so that's all good. And we'll go like that and stop the simulation here. So that injury sucks, but it's only for a week, so it's not too substantial. All right, so any trades that have happened, I'm just completely flabbergasted because the trade that with the Sens and the Sabres in real life, oh man. Just because that might actually end up being like Josh Norris going to Buffalo, which is kind of strange. But anyways, let's see what we got here in terms of fictitious trades. Any former guys getting dealt out of curiosity? Let's see. Or anybody that I actually recognize in this franchise mode. Probably not. Dawson Mercer getting dealt to Florida. All right. He's still playing, apparently. Dylan Cousins got dealt in this, too. And that's the player that the Sens are looking at bringing in, apparently. So that's kind of interesting that happened the same day. Oland, was that our former depth options? I think it was. That was one of those depth guys that we signed from, like, Pittsburgh when they went undrafted or something. Or he went drafted. I can't remember exactly, but I think I did have that Olin dude at one point. Aside from that, not really seeing anybody else that used to play with us. Shout out to Jet Luchenko getting dealt. Anybody else does not look like it. And there's our trade. Not a lot of trades happening at the deadline this year, which is interesting. I think our trade was a good lateral move. We get ourselves another first rounder, so we have 3 first-round picks this year. But we're still competitive. Obviously, we could have used those 3 first-rounders to get somebody really good, but I don't think it's something that's in my cards. Trading Leeson the same year that we're in a playoff hunt makes a little bit more sense just because of his lack of morale. So hopefully that doesn't impact the team too much. But we did make a good win on the deadline, winning 6-3 over Pittsburgh. So maybe this team will still be just as good. Like I said, Leg had been scoring a lot of goals as a 4th-line option. This will give him a better chance to score more goals. All right, let's continue to simulate. Let's get the rest of March done. See what ends up happening. But we should easily be able to hit 50 wins this season at this rate as we beat Tampa 9-2 and Columbus 4-1. How did we score 9 goals without Houghton in the lineup? That's pretty impressive considering he's such an elite offensive defenseman. So this team is absolutely filthy, and I can't stress enough that we need to have a good postseason ahead of us. And I don't even know what just happened there. Did it lag? Because I did not mean to put Houghton in for Schaefer at all. That was kind of weird. But yeah, I really stress that we need to have a good playoff run this year. If we do not have a good playoff run, that is pretty damn disappointing. So we got to be able to find a way to get to a Stanley Cup Finals or a Conference Finals this year at least. Because last season was quite lackluster in terms of the playoff run. Alright, game against Columbus, 7-5 victory. We beat Chicago as well. Yeah, we're definitely going to hit 50 wins, I think, this season easily. Unless we just lose a bunch of games going into the postseason. But this is going to be another good year for this team, which is not a surprise, as we beat Columbus for the 3rd time this month. And I almost forgot about this. In the AHL, Ola Carlson was out with a hernia injury. He has finally returned for the minors, so that's good. So he will get a chance to get back into the AHL playoffs potentially, because I think the AHL team should be similarly good, you would think. But honestly, this game could throw a complete curveball at me, and I wouldn't be surprised. So Ola Carlson back in. He only got to play how many games so far up to this point? Only 31 games. So he's missed like probably 30 plus as well due to that hernia. Hopefully if he makes the NHL someday, he doesn't get injured like that again, no, because that's a pretty bad injury to have as a young rookie kind of guy. So we lost to the Rangers, but we beat Colorado. Game against Pittsburgh. who's been pretty bad this season. We beat them 7-3. Carolina is an overtime loss, and Ottawa to wrap up March is a loss as well. We are now 49, 22, and 5. We have clinched a playoff spot, and we are in second place in the entire league right now. Chicago's also battling with us. All right, 4 games this week. We have Ottawa, Toronto, New Jersey, and Vancouver. We'll see what we do in this week, but obviously we have playoffs already confirmed, but I just want to see how this team does down the stretch. Shootout win over Ottawa. Toronto is a 5-3 loss. New Jersey is a 4-0 shutout. Nice. Vancouver is a 3-2 loss. So 51, 24, and 5. We are kind of dropping a little bit more games down the stretch, but it is okay because that way we don't win the President's Trophy, and that way maybe we have a higher chance to go further in the playoffs because we don't get that curse. Final 2 games of the season, Philadelphia and Florida. Philly is a 6-1 win, and Florida is also a 6-1 win. So a nice season for this team, 53, 24, and 5 to wrap up the year. Let's advance one more day so every team can be done. There we go. And we finished first place in the Metro, 111 points. Looks like we are going to finish in second place in the entire league. Looks like the Blackhawks are your President's Trophy winners this year. All right. Let's take a look at some stats here. And I know I see that Mäkinen led us in points with 99 points. So nobody hits 100 points on his team, but probably really good depth scoring, I would assume. All right, so in terms of the entire league standings, let's see what we got here. So yeah, we were second place in the league, only behind Chicago. In terms of goals for per game, we were the second best offensive team, only behind Chicago. So us and Chicago might be the most dangerous teams in this postseason. Goals against per game. We end up finishing as the third best defensive team, which is pretty damn good. We only allowed 4 more goals. Yeah, we only allowed 4 more goals than the Vegas Golden Knights and the Colorado Avalanche. So some very good defensive play, very good offense. Our power play percentage was second best in the league, only 0.1% worse than the Blue Jackets. So nearly tied for first place, which is pretty awesome. And then in terms of our penalty kill percentage, 86.1%. Which is also a very good penalty kill. It's actually tied for 5th. So literally no problems right now for me with this team based on that. We had 9 shorthanded goals this year, 26, 12, and 3 on home ice, 27, 12, and 2 on the road, 6-3 and 1 in our last 10 games. All right, so with that said, let's take a look at some player stats. This should be actually pretty interesting. And actually, you know what? Just for the climactic portion of this, I'm going to try and not look at anything here. And I'm just going to go to each position so that way we kind of have maybe more of a surprise on who's leading us in points and all that stuff. So here we go in terms of stats. Mäkinen, obviously we saw led in points, 99 points, 39 goals and 60 assists this year for him. He continues to be one of the better players on this team, which is fantastic because we have him on a pretty solid contract, I'd say, for his production. So Mäkinen, I think, could eventually hit 100 points in the next few years. I think he had 100 points last year though, right? He did in less games, so he's pretty consistent these last 2 seasons, which is good. Giordano had 88 points. Let's go. Bank on Giordano, and he did good. 32 goals, 56 assists. Big year for him. And that's why you give a guy a clause when he wants one. Maybe. 6/10. Let's go. That's a big year for Giordano. He did miss 1 game, but he was absolutely crazy good. Bjorkstrand at 74 points is kind of lower than anticipated, but he's still been good. Obviously, Giordano could maybe take that top line right wing spot from Bjorkstrand, but it's not the hugest issue. Eriksson on 65 points in 78 games. He was a very good player for us without power play time too. So he's a pending UFA after putting that much amount of points up. I don't know if he's a guy I'm going to end up losing or not. We might end up losing him this offseason just because he could end up being too costly, but he's been a very solid player for us too. Leahy on 37 points, not bad. 12 points in 61 games for Tulipov. He was a depth option we brought in. He didn't play a single game with us after we brought him in from the Jets, but that's okay. Korolyuk on 10 points in 82 games, so it looks like he finally found a way to score some more goals, but still doesn't shoot the puck a ton. So yeah, Korolyuk is not the best offensive kind of guy. Maybe more suited as like a two-way option with that defensive awareness. But yeah, he doesn't score a lot. Kaminsky, 9 points in 25 games since being put on the 4th line, +5. So I think he did just as good if not even better than what Leeson was doing for us on a third line role. So not bad. Left wing side of things, Frundell on 89 points this year, so a big year again from Anton Frundell, over point per game. We also had Crane on 85 points and 44 goals, so a good year again from Crane. He's a pending free agent, isn't he? Yeah, he is. All right, so we are going to have to throw out some money in the offseason, but that's why we got maybe rid of Leeson. Sealfido on 57 points, good year for him as well. And the Leg on 33 points, including 22 goals. See, I think Leg is literally just exactly what we needed on that third line. And Leeson was just a one problematic player because Leg is a third line scoring forward. He's not a top 6 guy. So I think by playing him on the third line, that should be okay with him in terms of ice time. Yeah, it looks like it. Yep, nice. After we made that trade, he gained some morale. So, nice. Right wing side of things. Nielkine's the only right winger, which is kind of funny. 23 points, including 13 goals in 82 games. Not bad. Not bad. He is listed as a third line checking forward, and he is starting to lose morale because of ice time. So, maybe he's the type of guy I look to replace in the offseason. He is signed for an extra year, but if he's going to complain about ice time, I don't know if there's a way I could get him into the third line. And then in terms of our defensive core, let's see what we got here. Howden on 74 points in 79 games and a plus 49. A very good season again from Howden. Not healthy the entire year like he was last year, but Howden continues to impress me. He's been close to point per game the last 3 years. Very good plus-minus stats as well. Yeah, 23 goals, I believe, is a goal career high as well. So at least he's scoring more goals than he was before. I think he's going to have a really good playoffs ahead of him as well. But yeah, his individual stats, absolutely filthy. One of the best players we've brought in via trade. Yes, I think we got rid of, who was it? Was it Pollock or Pellick? I can't remember. Aside from that, Tatar on 44 points plus 52. Schaefer 22 points plus 31. He just did exactly what I needed him to do with the demotion, I guess, or not demotion, getting rid of Salmelainen basically, is what I'm trying to say. And that Kasevi and Albrecht pairing, after scheme fitting them, the rest of the season, they end up having very good plus-minuses. +9, +8, and 16 and 14 points. Boyd was technically our worst defenseman offensively with 12 assists and no goals, but he was +10 too. And then Numelin, who played a few games with us, had 2 assists in 3 games. So that's nice to see from a depth option. Very nice. All right. So that is pretty good. What about our goaltending stats? How is Solovyov looking? A 906. He's probably not going to win a Vezina because of a 906, but still, he had a pretty good year. It was at 896. It jumped up to a 906. Maybe he still has a good playoffs ahead of him, but 39, 18, and 4 shutouts, that 906, and a 2.58. And Hainsey as a backup was pretty similar. 14, 8, and 1, a 900 save percentage, and a 2.82 goals against average with the 1 shutout. Not bad. And 4 assists from Solovyov this season, 1 assist from Hainsey. So our goaltending also helped out with the offense a bit. Nice. All right, stats from around the league. Let's see what we got here. Connor Bedard leading in points with 141 points at the end of the year. Pretty insane. Him, Nazar, and Lucas Reichel all had a really good season. So Chicago is kind of scary. All right. Nick Suzuki also up there with 110. Harris, a 104. Arkhipov with 101. Wasn't this guy? I know it was a different Arkhipov that was a low overall. This was the franchise guy, of course. Mishkov with 101 and Lucas Raymond with 100. But Makinen was up there. So good to see Makinen up there. Most goals this season is, in fact, Connor Bedard. 81 goals in 82 games. And then you had a 60 goal scorer in Woodworth. Jaskalainen, who could have been on this team still, 56 goals this season. But I think I like the hybrid production of Giordano maybe a bit more. But Jaskalainen is very good and could have been still a part of this team, but I just didn't give him a contract. So kind of interesting on that front. All right, in terms of defensemen, the most points by a defender was Houghton, and Houghton even missed 3 games, but he still led the league in defensive points. So Houghton's going to have his 2nd straight Norris Trophy, which is fantastic. I'm glad that we already gave him that extension because or else he'd be more and more expensive. But 74 points in 79 games plus 49, and he will have 2 Norrises in his career by the age of 28, which is awesome. So this guy might deserve a letter at some point in time if he doesn't have one already. And holy shit, shout out to Quinn Hughes. Literally could have had a Norris Trophy winning defenseman almost, like he was a top 4 defenseman, but minus 42 this season. So the Canucks are absolutely dreadful which is kind of crazy. Best goaltender this season in terms of wins is Marco Allen of Seattle. Most shutouts is going to be Blackburn in Minnesota, also Dubnyk in Colorado, I think. Yeah, we have Colorado's pick, remember. And Menard in LA. Best save percentage by a starter is probably going to be, well, there is Mark Legwand, but Allen played 70 games and had a 916. Devin Levi had a 916 and 71 games and a better goals against. So I don't really know who's going to win the Vezina because there's some goaltenders also with better goals against averages than that guy that played 71 games. So maybe Devin Levi wins it. Maybe it gives it to Allen. Really tough to say. Best rookie this season. Let's see that. Neil Wisniewski in Toronto, 44 points. All right, Surrey 43, Peckham with 41. Interesting rookie crop. So there is all that. Now the question is, who are we playing in round number 1? And are we going to get cheesed again just like last year? Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Hopefully the teams learn from their mistakes. It's going to be Detroit. All right, I don't know if we've ever played Detroit in the playoffs. I don't feel like we have. 42, 32, and 8 records. So maybe they're a tease team. Maybe not. But in terms of regular season comparison, let me just move my face so you guys can see. They were 11th in goals for. They were 15th in goals against, 16th on the power play, and 9th on the penalty kill. So basically, during the season, they were worse than us in every single facet of the game. But they did have a higher scoring team leader in Lucas Raymond with 100 points. Interesting. All right, let's take a look at their lines. And we'll take a look at their player stats from the season. Maybe take a look at the regular season meetings between us as well for fun. And then that'll be it for this episode. So Detroit is looking like this. Andre, how is it pronounced? Becker? I don't even know. But Andre with Marco Kasper and Lucas Raymond. So a very, very good top line. X factors on it. Second line has, what's your name? Avery Anstis. Or Anstis? I've never heard of this dude. They also have Brad Lambert and what's your name? Ryan James. Don't know any of these guys. Third line has Liam Campbell with Benjamin Kindle and Matt Maggio. So shout out to Matt Maggio, former Islander. I think he did win a cup last year or 2 years ago. It was last year, 2036-37. Because he was a free agent pickup, I guess. Oh, he was a free agent pickup by Detroit. 54 points this year? Are you kidding me? How did he have 54 points? In the NHL too? What the hell? Okay, that's a really strange one. Because he only has 145 career points, but 54 this season. For Matt Maggio, last year he had 10 points in 29 games as a depth option and then played in the playoffs, but 54 points. Where the hell was that when he was playing with us? Like, he had 22 points one year, but 54? Wow. Well, he is probably going to retire at the end of the season, but that is quite insane for a two-way contract. Fourth line has Artem Kulemin. What's your name? Landon Messier and Nicholas Bergfors. Not the Nicholas Bergfors, it's spelled different, but that forward group, not the strongest, but not the weakest. They definitely have some hidden talent with like guys like Maggio picking up that much amount of points. Like, how did Kindle do this season? 36 points. Yeah, that's pretty solid for 79. In terms of defenders, they have, let's see, Matthias Sundqvist. They also have, what's your name? Matt Schroeder. Moritz Seider. So MS on a lot of dudes. They also do have Owen Bentley and a top 6 pairing of Jalen DeMarchi and Ezra Rogers. I recognize Jalen DeMarchi from somewhere. Let's see, where did we see him? Well, he played in Toronto apparently, but I don't feel like we played Toronto that much recently in the postseason. Ezra Rogers also seems kind of familiar. Huh. He was on some teams, AHL teams. Maybe not. Maybe I remember him getting drafted or something like that. From a goaltending standpoint, they have Avery Davidson and Emil Vinny as the backup. All right. And in depth options, they have Riley Boychuk, Robbie Arventi. Yeah. And they also have Mr. Clifford Blake. Yeah, this Detroit team is interesting. They probably aren't a playoff team in my eyes, but this top line probably did a lot of damage. If you saw Lucas Raymond have 100 points, then that means Marco Kasper probably had a good year too. 95 points, 77 games. And then Andre Let's see what his stats are looking like. 88 points, 82 games. So yeah, they have some pretty good talent, especially on that top line. How does the second line simulate? Ryan James, 62 points. So yeah, they do have some offensive weapons that might not be the most insane players in the world, but they actually simulate good. So that's kind of scary. Final thing we got to take a look at is their regular season meetings against them, and that'll be it for this episode. Let's see. So against Detroit, how did we do against them? Our first meeting, we won 4-2. We probably won all the meetings, I would assume. There's another 4-2 win. All right. And a 2-1 win, so 3-0. We were 3-0 during the season against them, and we didn't give up too much goals, and we didn't necessarily score a ton, but we definitely have the upper hand, I think, for sure in this playoff matchup. But is Detroit another one of these teams that could be like Boston last year? They probably could be, but I'm really hoping that's obviously not going to be the case. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this episode of New York Islanders franchise mode. So in next episode, we will take it to the first round of playoffs again against Detroit as we look for a better outcome, obviously, than last year, because this team should be good enough to get themselves to a Stanley Cup Finals this year. It just all depends on what the game wants to do to us. So anything down below, and I'll see you guys next time.